how can we overcome the fear of failure, especially when it is preventing us from reaching our goals? I have chosen to work on this topic through Neurographica, and if you want to know exactly what kind of results I have obtained, come with me. Welcome back to the 4-Body Journey channel, and welcome to episode 8 of my series Diary of a Journeyman, where I show you practically what results and benefits you can obtain from learning Neurographica and applying it to your own life. This is the drawing that I have made this week, and I have chosen to work on the topic of the fear of failure. Now, this is the continuation of a case that I started, if you remember, in episode 4 of this series. And if you remember from that episode, I talked about the 3 categories of event that lead me to apathy. And the third category, which I had not tackled yet, was related to events where a self-sabotaging occurred due to a fear of failure. So in this drawing, I'm going to work on exactly that, on the fear of failure that comes in, to try and understand why it comes in and what I can do to overcome it. Now, something you may have noticed is that this drawing is somewhat similar to other drawings that I've made before. And so some of you might think, wait a second, but are you always doing the same drawing? Is it always the same thing? No, it's not. And let me explain to you why exactly. Now, the first drawing, the first course that you do when you start learning Neurographica is called the Basic User course. So in this course, you learn all of the basic principles and rules of Neurographica and some algorithms or some sequence of steps to start working on yourself. And all of these algorithms deal with working on with your past, so past events that influence you negatively now. And I always think that working on your past first and fixing the issues with your past is crucial in order to be able to build the best future for yourself. And so this is exactly what I am doing. Sure, I might be using the same algorithms or the same sequences of steps, but every time I'm applying it to a different problem. And so every time the drawing will be a little bit different, and there is no copying from one drawing to the other. Every drawing that I make is 100% unique, and every work that I do on myself through all of the topics that I'm working on is 100% unique. So from that point of view, there is no repetition from this standpoint on the work that I produce and that I share with you. So this Basic User course is the most important course that you can do because it gives you the basis to start working on yourself, and potentially could work on yourself for a lifetime. So the drawings might be a little bit similar, but every time you go and work on a different topic, the drawing that will come out will be unique because the insights that you receive are unique. So from that point of view, there is no repetition here. Sure, they might look a little bit similar, but every drawing is unique, and every result that I obtain is unique in its own regard. Now, as I said before, the topic of this week is the fear of failure. So all of these circumstances, events, situations where I have a goal I want to achieve, or I have a project I want to bring to completion, to fruition, but there is this fear that emerges and that makes me, not able to achieve that goal that I wanted to achieve. And so with this drawing, I wanted to figure out why it comes out and what I can do to overcome it. Because it's clearly something that is affecting me deeply, but I don't know exactly why I have that. So every time I have something that I care about, that motivates me, that stimulates me, that I really want to get far in, and I have some goals that I want to achieve, one part of me is really motivated and really eager to achieve that goal, eager to master that subject, that topic, that whatever. But there is also another part of me that really sort of holds me back, tells me that I will not be able to succeed, tells me that I will fail, and clearly this dualism is unacceptable. I really want to be able to become, able to focus wholeheartedly with my whole self into that activity in order to achieve my goal. As soon as I started drawing, I had a thought, a very negative, dark, sort of non-pleasant thought that just popped down in my mind out of nowhere. And this thought was, if I were to disappear right now in a cloud of smoke, or to quote a Linkin Park song, if my light were to go out, who would care? Who would be negatively impacted? Who would be sad about it? And I realized that besides my mother and my brother, no one would. Maybe there's like a couple of people who would be like startled for like a fraction of a second, but then they would just go back to what they were doing. And so at the end of the day, this is not a very pleasant thought, because ultimately my sort of footprint on this planet, on this world, in this society is basically non-existent. If I existed or I did not exist, not much would change. That is not a very good thing to, think about ourselves. And as I continue to think, I realize something that, maybe it is true, but maybe it isn't. Maybe it's just something that I'm making up in my mind. And maybe, there'll be a lot more people who would be sort of influenced, impacted by my disappearance. I don't know. But this is still, nonetheless, this is a thought that I have in my mind. And this is a thought that is affecting me, because every single time I start a new project or I have a new goal I want to achieve, well, all of these thoughts just, pile up, and the negative voice in my mind that keeps telling me that I won't be able to achieve anything, that I won't be able to do it no matter how much I try, will have just fertile ground to breathe and to become stronger and stronger. And so this is something that will negatively affect me no matter what I do and no matter what project I start. Now, after this very dark and unpleasant thought, I went back to the drawing and I started drawing again until I stopped, because I saw something on the sheet that really made me stop, and I felt the need to dissect that image completely to understand exactly what that meant. Now, as you've noticed in the last few episodes, I have stopped talking about the visions that I have while I'm making the drawing, because on the one hand, I think they lengthen the video too much, and on the other hand, they don't really provide any specific utility. As a matter of fact, they tend to dilute the insights that I provide you, which I think are the most important part of the whole conversation we have. Therefore, I thought, to just stick to the insights, share those with you, and leave everything else out. But in this case, this image is so fundamental and so crucial for this topic that I thought I had to include it for you. So this is what I saw on the sheet. Now, after this very dark and unpleasant thought, I went back to drawing until I got stopped by an image, something I saw on the sheet that made me realize that it was, something very important, and that I needed to understand the meaning of that image 100% completely. I needed to dissect that image and understand it perfectly. And usually I've stopped talking with you about the images that I see, the vision that I see while I'm making the drawing, because on the one hand, they made the video far too long, and then on the other hand, they weren't providing any specific utility. As a matter of fact, they were taking away from the insight, which I think are the most important thing in the conversation that we are having. And so I thought to just, remove all of the visions, present to you only the insights, and just leave everything else out. But if, as in this case, the image is something crucial, something fundamental, something that is absolutely necessary to understand, the whole path of my reflection, then I will still provide to you, like in this case. So what did I see? I basically saw a cradle with a snake that was, looking inside the cradle, almost ready to attack. And I could not see inside the cradle, but I sort of knew instinctively that I was the one inside the cradle. I was the one inside there. And I could not understand really what the meaning of that image was until I saw a detail, and that detail basically changed everything. Now, at that point, I understood the image completely. And the detail was noticing that the cradle and the snake were one. They were merged. They were one unique entity. That the cradle sort of became the snake. And that was a very weird thing that I saw, but something that just made everything click. So I always see myself as someone who is weak, defenseless, like a little kid who sees everything outside as difficulties, issues, problems that are insurmountable, that I cannot overcome them by myself. And so that cradle is something that protects me, but at the same time, that cradle is the problem, or at the very least is a part of the problem. Why? Well, because basically that same cradle that is protecting me is keeping me there. I do not have the opportunity to grow. I do not have the opportunity to learn how to handle difficulties, how to tackle them. And so I I remain constantly stuck there, not being able to, tackle any issue. So in practice, what does the cradle represent? Basically, it represents all of the things, all of the habits that I have developed to sort of try and help me to protect me a little bit, to try and better focus on the main goals that I want to achieve, on the main projects that I want to bring to completion. However, over time, these habits have become at times even counterproductive. They are not helping me anymore. They are not allowing me to better focus on certain topics or certain goals on certain projects, but as a matter of fact, they are hindering my ability to become able to tackle my issues even in these projects. So I'm going to tell you an example. I'm going to give you just an example of what I mean with this. So back when I was living in Australia, I lived in an area where basically I could move exclusively through either by foot or by public transport. I didn't need to have a car at all. So I could, just go to university and go back home and go and do my groceries, all either by foot or through public transport. And every time I was, commuting or I was traveling somewhere, I always had my headset on and I was listening to either music or a podcast or something like that. Okay. And why was I doing that? Well, this was allowing me to, on the one hand, to focus, on the other hand, to relax and just let my mind wander. Now, this didn't mean that, I was careless or that I was distracted. I was always perfectly aware of what my surroundings were. I knew everything that was happening behind me, in front of me, to the side of me. I always knew what was going on. And so I was always ready and, on the edge, ready to tackle any problem, and ready to tackle any rowdy person that was around me. But at the same time, I was still, enjoying the relaxation and the better focus that came from listening to music. However, at the same time, while on the short term, this is definitely a very good strategy that really helped me out and allowed me to either focus on some work-related problems that I needed to solve or onto other things I wanted to think about and just letting my mind wander a little bit. On the long term, what was it doing? Well, I noticed that while I was, dissecting this image and thinking about this, I noticed that it's sort of like built a wall, a fence between me and everyone else. So it was almost sort of like isolating me, creating an isolation around me. And I'm a very introverted person, so I am not one to, go around and talk to everyone or have like 1,000 friends. On that regard, there was never something that I've ever done. So I was always, by myself. I wasn't really someone who would talk to a lot of people. But even if I wanted to, I just couldn't. That habit that I developed, and that was definitely something that I enjoyed. But at the same time, even if I wanted to talk to someone, I would not be able to. And over time, this became more and more significant. So this is just an example of a habit that is a part of this cradle that in the short term I thought was helping me, but that by using it for such a long amount of time, it started creating also issues. So it started becoming counterproductive. So now, of course, this is not the only reason why I have this fear of failure. There's plenty of other factors. That is just one of these, but it is one that I was able to recognize through this image, and so one that I think I definitely have and I want to tackle in order to get a bit further to, closer to the solution that I want to find. And yeah, so even though I have this cradle and that I developed this cradle just to try and protect myself a little bit, over time, over the long term, it started to become counterproductive. And so I need to, this cradle was useful in the past. Now I need to be able to get out of this cradle and start, handling face on all of the difficulties that I find in my life. Now, this analysis begs one question. When did it all begin? When did I start to experience this fear of failure? I think it's important to know, because the moment I'm able to pinpoint the period in which I started to experience that, then I can start to look much more closely and, with much more precision to try and figure out exactly what was the event that led to it beginning. And so I think this is very important in this regard. And so I started scanning my archive of memories. And initially I thought that the starting point was me moving to Australia to start my PhD, because I started to find some examples of activities or goals or projects that I was starting to undertake when I was in Australia, where basically I started to experience this fear of failure, and that, that became more and more prevalent. But then as I continued to think, I started to also remember other examples from before then, from when, before I moved to Australia. So clearly that wasn't the point, that wasn't the issue. But no matter what, every event that I recalled in which I experienced this fear of failure always followed the same sort of, routine, that same sequence of events. Basically, I start the project, I start the activity with motivation. I am motivated, I am ready, I'm full of energy, I'm full of motivation, I'm full of, eagerness to continue and to bring this project to completion. And then after this initial period, after the initial learning period where I have, to learn the fundamentals, all of the basics, then when it's time to put those basics into practice and start practicing those basics, those fundamentals, until I become good enough at them to, build the foundation from which I can, build mastery of that topic or of that activity or whatever. Well, in that a part of the learning process where there is not a clear, progress, there is not a clear indication of what progress you are making, because you're still learning those skills, you are trying to, it's a non-linear learning process. It's not something where you can figure out exactly how much you're progressing. Well, that's when exactly all of these, fears come out. And I started to think, okay, well, you're not making any progress. Clearly, you're not good enough. Clearly, you're not going to succeed. Clearly, you should just give up. And so after a while, I would end up giving up. And one other thing I've noticed was also that every single time this fear of failure came up, I also started to, see myself as a lower level than the other people, and the other people at a level that I would never reach. So I started to see myself being inferior to other people, and I started seeing myself as someone who would never reach the level of the other people. So this is clearly something that had other ramifications other than just the fear of failure itself. Now, as I continued going back in my archive of memories, as I continue, recollecting events and memories from when I was younger and younger, I came across an event that made me stop, and that was really a breakthrough, which was my participation in the International Chemistry Olympiads. So for those of you who don't know, these International Chemistry Olympiads are an international competition which is hosted once a year for high school students. So any high school students that participate to the qualifying events which are held in every country, and then the best can then compete in these competitions. So ever since I was 7 years old, I wanted to become a chemist. And so I wanted to study chemistry and become a chemist. But ever since I heard about this competition first, in my mind, it was crystal clear. Not only I wanted to get there, but I wanted to win a medal there. I wanted to become one of the best. I wanted to win a medal there. For me, that was, a goal that I had set for myself, that I just popped in my mind. And I gave my all for it. I gave everything I had for it. So basically, when I came home from school, I would have lunch, I would do my homework, and then I would start, after I had done my homework, I would start studying chemistry. And in the little free time that I had, I would study chess. So my life was, school, homework, then chemistry, and then a little bit of chess. That was all I did. In the afternoons, I was doing that. In the weekends, I was doing that. During holidays, I was doing that. I was really devoting an incredible amount of time and effort into it. And in my 4th year of high school, I was actually able to win the national championships and to participate in the Olympiads. But not only I participated in the Olympiads, I also was able to win a bronze medal. So, I had basically achieved my goal with a year to spare. And so I was over the moon. I was incredibly happy because I had achieved my goal. And what I noticed was that leading up to this Olympiad, I had really put all of my effort into it, and I had achieved my goal. Next year, I still put some effort, but it wasn't to the same level. I was, a lot more on autopilot than I was the previous year. And that year, I still, that my last year, my fifth year of high school, my last year of high school, I still managed to win the national championships, and I still managed to go to the Olympiads, and I still managed to win a silver medal. So I did even better than that year than I did the year before. But it sort of wasn't the same thing because I didn't put the same level of effort. And then after I finished high school, after this last year, I moved to university. And what I noticed was that the first couple of years of university, I basically went on autopilot because I had acquired so much knowledge, so much chemistry knowledge in order to prepare for the Olympiads, that basically I had next to no study to do in order to be able to still pass my exams. And I was passing my exam with, the maximum grade available. In Italy, you are graded on a scale from 1 to 30, where 18 is a passing grade and 30 is the best. And then you have also 30 cum laude if your exam is particularly outstanding. And virtually all of my exams were like either 30 or 30 cum laude. So, I was really doing very, very well, but I wasn't devoting as much time as I was, before, while I was preparing for the Olympiads. I wasn't as much time to studying because basically I was I had so much knowledge that many things that were explained, that were taught during these courses, I already knew. And so coincidentally, this was also the time when I started to develop other interests, like, for other activities, for other hobbies. And that's when my mind really started to get interested by a bunch of different activities, and which was good. There was nothing inherently bad about it, but I think that shows that my mind wasn't as totally into chemistry as it was before. So I think that was actually the issue. So maybe that was exactly the problem. The thing was, I had this goal that I felt so strongly that I devoted all of myself towards reaching it. And then when I reached it, when I was able to achieve my goal, and then when I noticed that I had a couple of years where basically I didn't need to study much because I already knew enough to do basically the best, to get the best possible grade that was available. Basically, my mind, I think something started to come up, and a new type of awareness started to come in, which was, well, you know what? You don't need to focus as much, you don't need to devote as much time and attention and effort as before, because you devoted so much time and effort already before that, you have achieved that incredible goal, and now all of the goals seems much easier, so you don't need to devote as much effort. You can sort of take a step back and start being interested in other activities. However, I think that was in looking back, I think that was a mistake actually, because you can view it like this. So basically, during my high school years, this was, there was a steep sort of climb where I needed to put a lot of effort to keep, improving and coming further up and working towards my goals. Then after I came to the top, after I won that medal at the Olympiads, I had a period of, a period of calmness, a period of a straight sort of path without any ascent, without any descent. So, a perfectly straight path where I didn't need to put as much effort to move forward. And so in my mind sort of materialized the thought, well, you know what? You can continue not to put as much effort. You still need to put effort, but not as much as you did before, and you'll still achieve your goals. And then when the next ascent came up, well, I wasn't prepared. I wasn't ready for it. And so I was continuing to put effort, but not as much effort as before, even though there wasn't maybe enough. And so what happened? Well, achieving my goals became more difficult. And so the first doubt started to creep in, because what I started to realize was, yeah, wait a second, but before I achieved that, now it's more difficult. Now I'm struggling a bit more. Could it be that I'm not good enough anymore? And then, that doubt stays. It doesn't go away, it stays there. And then afterwards, you get new goals. You still have that ascent. You still need to put, effort. But you have these doubts that are weighing you down, they are there on your shoulder. And so you start to struggle even more to achieve your goals then. And that the voice in your head starts becoming bigger and stronger because ultimately you're struggling more and more to achieve your goals. And so that is a vicious circle, that is, a self-increasing, self-strengthening circle where you're struggling more and more to achieve your goals to the point where you cannot achieve them anymore. And that voice becomes stronger and stronger until it's basically so pervasive and so invasive that it, basically is present in every single aspect of your life. So I think that is the reason why I find myself with such a strong fear of failure. Now, another interesting thing that I noticed though, while I was remembering all of this, while I was recollecting all of these memories from my past, was that something interesting I noticed was that, as I explained before, I had this initial period of ascent during high school when I need to put a lot of effort, and I put a lot of effort in to achieve my goals. Then I had this period of stasis in the first years of university where I didn't need to put as much effort as before to achieve the same goals. And then I had the second ascent period where I still need to put a lot more effort in order to achieve my goals, but I sort of was in a different mental state where I was not able to put the same effort anymore. And what I noticed was that, as I told you before, I started developing a lot of hobbies, a lot of pastimes during that period of, sort of a flat line between two ascending period in my first couple of years of university. And all of these hobbies that I developed, what I noticed was that when I started to have the first difficulties and the fear of failure started to creep in, before I gave up on these projects, before I gave up on these activities, something that I noticed was that I was starting to look almost for an egg of Columbus. So rather than, an alternative strategy to sort of quote unquote almost cheese it. So in order to achieve my goal, I was trying to find a strategy that would allow me to achieve it with a fraction of the effort that I would have to put in, doing it the traditional way. And so in a vacuum, there is nothing wrong with it because, this kind of ingenuity could be something that could also be very useful. But at the same time, I wasn't doing it because I wanted to find a different way to do the same thing. I wanted to do it because I wanted to do it in an easier way. And so that was the negative thing, because that created a forma mentis basically where I wasn't trying to learn that skill that required me, that I was required to use in order to achieve my goal, but I was just trying to find an alternative road that would allow me to reach my goal without having to learn that skill. And so that is the negative. That is the fact that basically I was trying to run away from having to learn things, from having to master things in order just to try to achieve my goals without having to, do the work. And so that was the negative thing. That was the negative aspect about all of these sort of my approach to new hobbies. Now, this was a very, very tough sort of thought to unravel, okay? This image and then all of the resulting insights that I obtained required a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of mental energy in order to achieve. So this was very, a very tough mental job, but one that really led me to a lot of amazing insights and insights that I needed really badly. However, something that I noticed happened, which in a way amused me and the other way worried me a little bit, was the fact that as soon as I completed that thought and I obtained all of the insights that I've just shared with you, my brain is almost as if it switched out. Now, I hadn't finished the drawing yet. There were still some steps that I had to go through, okay? And yet my brain was done. My brain was finished. It was like, I'm done. I've obtained all of the insights that I needed. So cool, we're finished there. And this is the thing. This is indicative of, of everything we have just talked about. So my brain, as soon as it put in some effort and obtained some results, it was like, I'm satisfied. I don't need to put any more effort. Even though there's still, more details that need to be uncovered, still my brain was done. And so this is another confirmation that I really need to put effort, a lot of effort, into being able to eradicate this fear of failure from my mind. and eradicating this attitude from my mind, because I really need to be able to obtain every insight that I need in order to help myself and guide myself as much as I need to. And practically, how am I going to do that? I thought about it for a while, and then what I realized was that what I need to do is I need to take all of the activities that I started and then I stopped because of this fear of failure that came in and that basically made me give up, and lead them to completion, achieve my goals that I set out for myself in every single one of these activities. And this is very important for three main reasons. The first reason is that, of course, I'm gonna get, but that boost of energy, that boost of motivation. It was like, yeah, you succeeded, you reached your goal, good job. The second reason is that basically, I'm still using that as a good training opportunity to learn how to overcome difficulties, to learn how to tackle difficulties, and to learn how to overcome my fear of failure. And third reason, which is a bit surprising, is also the fact that the moment, and this is something that I have really felt a couple of times when I was able to take one activity and bring it to completion and achieve my goal, was the fact that once I achieved my goal, that activity is almost as if it disappeared from my mind, as if it never existed, as if it doesn't exist anymore for me. All of the activities that I still haven't brought to completion are still there in the corner of my mind, and they are there buzzing, and they are taking away my attention and my focus from the activities I would like to focus on right now. But once I take one activity and I bring it to completion, what happens? Well, that activity is as if it disappears. I don't feel any desire to pick it up again and work on it again. I have achieved my goal. I have set out what I wanted to achieve. I am done. I am satisfied. I don't need to do any work anymore. So, it is really important that I start to close all of these circles, close all of these micro journeys, and start to really, bring this project to completion, bring this activity to the goal that I set out for myself. And this was the hardest part. Realizing all of this, acquiring all of these insights, and formulating this sort of general abstract plan of action, this was the hardest part. Now it comes the practical part. Now it comes the part where I put this into practice and I start actually working on these activities. But that is, the least effort. The biggest effort was actually figuring out exactly what was going on. So, now that I've done the hard part, it's time for me to move to the practical side and start doing the easy part and bringing all of this activity to fruition. Okay, now it's the time for our usual exercise. What are three conclusions that I can draw from everything that I have just shared with you? The first conclusion is that my fear of failure comes from a lack of trust that I have in my ability to tackle the difficulties that I face in these projects. And in part, this comes from habits that I have developed over time to try and help myself. The second conclusion is that if I want to achieve my goals, especially if they are goals that are really important for me, the first thing I need to do is to start feeling these goals very strongly. And the second thing I have to do is to start putting in as much effort as necessary in order to achieve them. And the last conclusion is that in order to tackle my fear of failure, I need to start taking all of the activities that I started and I stopped because of that over the years, and I need to start bringing them to completion. I need to start achieving my goals in them, because that will be a perfect training opportunity for me to start learning how to overcome difficulties in my life. And now, practically, what am I gonna do? In this episode, I have decided to do one thing. So what I will do is I will prepare a list. It's an open list, so I can, add any entries at any point in time, where I'm gonna put all of the activities that I have started over the year that I have never brought to completion, where I have never achieved my goals. And for each entry of the list, I'm gonna list very clearly what goal I want to achieve. What is the goal that I set out for myself? And then, once I have prepared the list, I'm gonna order it. So, starting from the task that I want to tackle first, all the way to the task that I'm okay with tackling last, and then one at a time, of course, compatible with all of my other commitments. So from my work for this project, my working out, the time I spend with my family and all that, I am going to start working on one task at a time and bring them to completion so that I can start removing, all of these buzzing sounds in my mind one at a time. I can start removing them and start having more focus and more attention for all of the topics, all of the areas, all of the activities, all of the projects that I want to focus on right now. And so I can have more focus and more attention for these. Now, this was my solution for this problem. What if you are experiencing fear of failure too? What is your solution? Or what if you have a different kind of problem? How can you find the best solution for you? Well, this is where Neurographica comes in. Neurographica is a technique that allows you to work on a wide range of issues that you might face in your life, from past events that are negatively affecting you right now, to the most effective way to plan for your future related to a specific, activity or project, to tackling moments of heavy, intense emotional turmoil so that you can reduce that intensity and achieve, and reobtain your balance. Neurographica can help you with all of that. Neurographica cannot do miracles, cannot, magically manifest money from nothing, but it can help you. It can still help you with a wide range of problems that you might face in your life. Neurographica is also a very versatile technique because you can work on it whenever you want. As long as you have some time to focus solely on Neurographica, on making this drawing and on observing yourself, you can draw. You can also draw on whatever topic you want as long as it is related to you. And you don't need to have a degree in art or having done whatever artistic related courses to be able to draw Neurographica. As long as you can hold a marker, a highlighter, or a pencil in your hands, and as long as you're able to observe yourself, what you are feeling, what you are thinking while you are making this drawing, you can draw Neurographica. From that point of view, Neurographica is adaptable to be done by almost everyone. I am a Neurographica instructor, supervisor, and specialist, and I organize courses where I give you all of the tools that you need in order to start applying Neurographica to your life and changing it for the better. Now, if this video is your first introduction to Neurographica, well, I invite you to join my basic user course, which is my introductory course on Neurographica, where I teach you all of the basic principles and the rules of this technique, and I teach you some algorithms like this one, which you can start using right away to change your life for the better. From this point of view, the basic user course is the most important course in Neurographica that you will ever take. The most important one by far. And it is one that will allow you to start working right away on some very important issues that you might face in your life, and where you can, start applying all of these lessons to start changing your life for the better, one drawing at a time. From this point of view, I think it is a very important course and one that I advise you strongly to take. If you have any questions or if you want to have more information about my courses, you can contact me through my social media profiles or to my email address. You will find everything in the description down below. With this being said, thank you very much for following me all the way to the end of this video. I hope this was useful. If you have any question, any doubt, any feedback, please write to me in the comments. I'll read everything and answer to as much as I can. And with this being said, thank you very much. See you next video. Ad maior. Oh, you're still here. I'm very happy to see that. If you want, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, or you can open this playlist that contain all of the episodes of this series, or you can watch this video. I'm sure you're gonna like that. The choice is yours. Have fun, and I'll see you in the next video.